Welcome to the program. Now, in Zambia today, the population of young people is around 4.8 million, aged between 15 and 35 years, which is about 36.7% of Zambia's population, the largest population of young people in its history. This presents an enormous opportunity to transform the country's future. For political systems to be representative, all parts of society must be included. When young people are disengaged from political processes, a significant portion of the population has little or no voice or influence in decisions that affect the group members' lives. A key consequence is that the undermining of political systems' representativeness. Today, our topic of discussion is the role youths play in shaping Zambia's future after the elections. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to today's episode of the Ask Elections TV series that is powered by the Alliance for Community Action. Your host, I'm Patrick Soko, and today on the program, I'm joined by BWEMBYA, also known as B-Flow, and I'm also joined by MWIZA ZULU, a human rights advocate as well as musician. Both of them are musicians as well as human rights advocates. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick, and thanks to the viewers as well for tuning in. We're looking forward to it.
We are happy that you could find time to be part of the program.
Thank you for having us.
Interesting. Now, our dear viewers will also be able to participate on the program by dialing the numbers that will be scrolling on your screens. In case you want to ask our guests some questions, you'll be able to participate by dialing the numbers that have been put forth by our team there. Now, in the past, I want to understand, Mr. WEMBYA. Okay, it's easy to address you by B-Flow. In the past, why haven't we seen voter apathy, especially amongst young people? Based on your experience, would you have a position on that?
Yes, definitely. Thank you very much once again for hosting me on this wonderful and important program. When we go back in history, you'll find that at every stage of the different democratic processes that our country has, young people have been at the height of everything that is happening, whether it's voting, standing in the queue, whether it's participating in whatever activities political parties are trying to undertake. You see young people always in the forefront and being sent to do different things. Other people use them for for violence. Others use them as mobilizers to go and mobilize fellow young people. So because it has been like that over the years, where young people are always involved, they also now begin to face their own frustrations. They begin to have their own frustrations to say, we have been participating in all these processes for so long, but how come nothing is coming forth for us? Why is it that we continue to stay on the same level, whereas the beneficiaries or the people who continue to enrich themselves are the ones at the top, who happen to be the politicians in this case? So it becomes frustrating to a point where young people now say, we can no longer participate in some of these things. And you hear several times young people saying things like, even if I vote, what difference does it make? What difference does my one vote make? I don't even see any difference. Others will say, because these politicians are all the same, they're just lying to us. So when you continue hearing things like that, then you know that young people are frustrated, and that's the reason that that apathy has been there.
Interesting. Now, MWIZA, what do you think needs to be done in order to change the status quo in terms of improving the interest, especially amongst the young people, to be participating in the electoral process?
Well, like you said in your preamble, young people are a large majority of the country. And so when you see young people shunning away from issues of politics and governance, it's quite disappointing, because that means a majority of the people are shunning away from issues of governance. And first of all, I think politics and governance needs to be made attractive for young people. Because I personally studied politics and international relations, and I've met so many people ask me, why would you do that course? Right? Because politics is not seen as a young people thing. It's not seen as, something that young people would take interest in, especially young women. And so I feel like it needs to be made more attractive for the young people, because currently the political situation is very dirty, if I could call it that. You know, there's so much violence, so much mudslinging and this and that. And so sometimes young people feel it's not even worth being a part of, because why am I going to be part of these issues if, you know, all I'm going to do is get insulted, get beaten, you know. So that idea of it needs to change. Also, I feel like young people themselves need to make that realization, because I don't think as Zambian youth we have fully realized how important our voice is. We haven't fully realized the potential that you know we have as young people. The world, the country has been built by young people. Even Zambia itself, the people who were fighting for our independence were young people. So, you know, I think we need to realize the power that we have, especially when we are united and we actually take interest in the governance of the country. Governance is everything. You can't say, no, I'm a nurse, so I won't do politics. I'm a musician, so, you know, I won't participate in politics, because the governance of the country determines everything that happens in every single industry. In the music industry, the health, education, everything is reliant on governance. So we need to take that interest.
Brian, do you have a position on that as well? How can we improve the interest, especially amongst young people, to be participating in the electoral process?
Well, we need to come up with deliberate policies to, you know, try and be more inclusive in terms of how you allow young people to participate in different processes. You know, young people are bigger, better and smarter than being used as tools of political violence, because they also have something to offer. You know, but if the situation continues to be whereby young people can only be given, you know, positions of being commander this at a particular bus station, then it becomes difficult. But if we start coming up with, you know, deliberate plans, for example, if political parties can say, in our party, for example, we're going to have 40% adoption of young candidates under the age of 35, that's something already that makes it attractive for young people to want to participate in that particular process. And you know, much more can be done in terms of coming up with deliberate policies.
Interesting. Now, I also want to find out what factors should young people look for when it comes to voting, as various leaders present manifestos to them. What should they focus on?
Yeah. I think that there are so many things that young people should focus on, including quality, you know, quality of leadership, because I think that in Zambia for a long time, young people have focused more on who is the most charismatic speaker, who's the guy that speaks well. But it's not just about speaking. Others will say who speaks a particular language well, because apparently in our country, languages also play a very big or vital role when it comes to determining who is going to be more influential on the political, you know, front. And it should be beyond that. Young people should now start looking at, you know, qualities. One of the things that young people can do is to understand, for example, the Sustainable Development Goals, you know, study and understand what these SDGs are, and then come back to, because the SDGs are global. So they now bring it to the local context and say, how are these SDGs being met in my own country? And then you hear the manifestos and try to align them and see, are they in line with the SDGs? If this particular candidate is making promises, are they making mere promises, or are these promises aligned to the SDGs? That way at least you have some sort of, you know, a guide or a template as to what you should look for in a candidate. What are they bringing to the table? Also, what's the track record? What are their accomplishments in life? Have they had a good record? Where do they come from? What's their background? What type of families, what type of communities did they grow up in? What type of challenges did they face, and what steps did they take to overcome those challenges? Just having a general understanding of who the person is, and also their integrity as well, because integrity in leadership is really, really vital.
MWIZA, what is your take on that in terms of factors young people should look for when they want to exercise their right to vote?
Well, I think first of all, as as any human being, the first thing you take interest in are the things that matter to you. So as a young female musician, for example, I'm going to want to know what the politician's agenda is for the young people, what the politician's agenda is for the women, what the politician's agenda is for the artists. Because like I said, governance and government determine everything that happens in all of these scenarios. And so obviously number one would be to understand the agenda of these candidates when it comes to the young people especially. Not so many young people that I know take that much interest to study the manifestos of their candidates and, you know, understand what they bring to the table. It's all about, you know, slogans, songs, you know, who has, you know, who said the funniest thing, who's trending and things like that. But I feel like we need to take a greater interest in actually understanding the manifestos of these people. Second of all, there's so many very important sectors that we need to look at, sectors like education, sectors like health. And if you are looking at the party in power, for example, Biflo talked about a track record. So for the party in power, it's actually easy to scrutinize them. How accountable have they been to the citizens and to the young people? And to those aspiring to get into office, how do they plan on being accountable and transparent to the citizens and the young people? So in addition to what Brian said, I think that's what I have to say.
But MWIZA, how can young people be included in the country's developmental agenda, in your own view?
Well, you see, the development agenda is for all of us. And you said it was a good opening to say that young people are a majority. You know, so the moment that you don't include young people in the development agenda, then you're not including a majority of the country. You know, a lot of this country is run by, you know, our parents, you know, our grandparents. And, you know, sometimes they may not quite understand the needs of the youth of today because times have changed. You know, we are living in a technological era, you know, and they may not necessarily relate to it as much and many other things like that. So I feel like whatever is going to be done, whatever policies are going to be made, especially that have to do with young people, need to include the young people themselves. Young people need to be able to access their leaders. You know, members of parliament make the laws for us. So they should be accessible. I should be able to, you know, go to my constituency office and, you know, take what I think should be done for the young people. Second of all, young people have many, you know, platforms that they can use to air these things out. And so I feel like as young people speak to the leadership should also be able to listen to the young people. Apart from that, young people can also actively participate in politics. They can, you know, run for office. I see a lot of young people running for councillor, MP now, which is great, and I hope that this sets precedents for the next elections. We hope more young people, more young women are going to, you know, participate in these processes. So if they are not interested in getting into the politics, the elections, they can always hold their leaders accountable.
We understand that, I know Brian mentioned it, Zambia is a part of the UN Sustainable Development Goal agenda, and where we have various goals which Zambia has to domesticate. And now we understand that there are a number of issues that hinder young people, such as access to education, access to health, and among others. But we know that these sustainable development goals, these are goals countries, including Zambia, have affirmed to, and they talk to these same issues: access to quality health, access to quality education. But how can we ensure that that is achieved? Brian, on your take on that?
Well, I think it calls for accountability, and you know, calling for accountability is the responsibility of every citizen. Because, you know, in a democracy, citizens, you know, queue up to go and vote, and once they vote, whoever takes office, whether it's the person you voted for or not, that person now becomes a leader for all the citizens, and all the citizens have got the responsibility to hold that leader or those leaders accountable. So it's now up to every citizen, whether, you know, in a particular age bracket, or whether youth, whether whether you're a veteran or you're in the aged,
a senior youth,
or a senior citizen. Every one of us must hold leaders accountable and say, as a country, we are party to this document, to these SDGs, and therefore, what are you as our leaders making sure that, you know, what are you doing to make sure that these SDGs are met? What are you doing to ensure that there is reduction in poverty? What are you doing for, you know, sanitation and clean water? What are you doing to reduce the hunger in the country? What are you doing for education, health, decent jobs, and many other things? So it calls for accountability, and that accountability is a call that comes from the citizens directly to the leaders.
On that, you can add to.
I want to agree that accountability is the most important aspect when it comes to us being able to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. Before the Sustainable Development Goals, we had the Millennium Development Goals, which, you know, whose targets we were supposed to reach. But I didn't see so much, you know, accountability, citizens questioning that. And so when citizens don't question, when citizens sit back and relax, so do the leaders. They'll say, you know, it's okay. They're not asking questions, so we are just doing fine. And also, I think we need to personalize the governance agenda, the SDG agenda, because a lot of the time, as young people and as citizens in general, we look at governance politics and say, oh, it's the government, the government, the government. But you know, even on issues of, for example, if you hear that 6 billion is missing from a particular ministry, it's like, oh, they've stolen 6 billion from Ministry of Health. But you know, when someone steals a 10 kwacha from you personally, you say, ah, they've stolen a 10 kwacha from me, and it hurts you. So that 6 billion should hurt you just as much, because you know, that's your money, it's taxpayers' money. So same with holding leaders accountable. We need to personalize governance and realize that every single thing that's done affects me personally. Before I even say the youth, before I even say women, it affects me as MWIZA Zulu personally. So I think that's another thing that we need to do. We need to personalize governance and realize that everything that's done affects us personally, as families, as communities, and as the country at large.
Interesting. The subject of SDGs is an important one, considering the fact that even our 7th NDP was tilted towards that, which is making sure that no one is left behind. I know as advocates, you've been following these issues, and SDGs is a measuring factor to determine how the country is implementing various development aspects. I would like to get it from you. Do you, in your move, I know you have moved around the country, and throughout your advocacy, do you think people are on board, or many people are still being left behind in terms of participating as well as holding leaders accountable in as far as SDGs are concerned?
Well, speaking from a young people perspective, I feel like leaders have taken advantage of maybe the fact that young people are not, you know, actively questioning things. Some young people, that is, because there's also a number of young people who are doing that. And so young people have been reduced to, you know, being, like it was said, commanders and cadres and things like that. And it looks like that's you know, that's the thing, because these are the people that are living well. These are the people, you know, that, you know, so instead of reading about the SDGs, you go to the gym so you can become a commander. So yeah, I feel like a lot more can actually be done to leave no one behind, and especially the young people. Young people ourselves, we need to be proactive, you know, because while we are saying young people need to be included, young people need to be included, we also need to fight for that inclusion, you know, because sometimes if you don't actively, you know, go and grab something, it will never be given to you. You know, people say even on a bus sometimes you have to say hello, conductor, and the person change younger, you know. So yeah, while young people need to be included in the agenda, we also need to ensure, as young people ourselves, that we, you know, actively hold our leaders accountable, actively participate, and, you know, actively play our role.
Brian, what can young people do post the August 12 general elections to ensure that they raise the leadership bar, which has dropped?
Indeed, the leadership bar has dropped, and that's why we continue to see only those that have got the commander type of attitude taking up leadership positions, because they are the ones who have got the, you know, the boldness to go out there and, you know, try and vie for these positions, because the ones who think that they are clean or knowledgeable or educated are sitting back to relax. So to raise that bar, it takes all of us positioning ourselves as young people and saying, because I know that I have researched, I know that I'm passionate about my country, my future, and you know, I'm following the current affairs of the nation, I know what's going on, and I'm dissatisfied or disgruntled about certain things, I want to make sure that one day I can also sit at the decision-making table. So it's really up to us now to, like MWIZA said, you have to go and grab some of these opportunities and say, you know, you have to make a demand. It's a demand that you have to make to say, I want to be part of these processes. And so to position ourselves as young people calls for us to come together so that we are in numbers, because already the statistics are good in terms of the numbers that you already, you know, alluded to. But now, how can we make use of those numbers and make sure that we are visible in what we are doing, in the positive things that we are doing? We need to be seen to be doing those things. We can't just say we are the majority, but we sit back and relax. We need to say we are the majority and we are out here looking for these opportunities, and everybody has to step up and say, guys, let's do something, because a lot of young people, you have got a tendency of saying, no, politics is not for the young people. You've seen, they always tell us, and all these things. But we need to be actively involved. So after the elections, it's the responsibility of every young person rather, who is concerned about their future, to come up and say, you know what, whoever wins this election, whether there is a change of government or whether it's the same government that continues, we have to hold our leaders accountable irrespective of who takes office. Everybody has to be held accountable. So we must continue as young people calling for, you know, the implementation of different SDGs, calling for the fulfillment of campaign promises, and going back to those manifestos. And it's good that these days we even have access to, you know, online means of downloading some of these manifestos, or if not all of them, whereby you can keep a record of it, and once you see who takes office, you say, okay, I'm going to look at this manifesto and start, you know, counter-checking to see if they are really implementing the things that they promised.
Interesting. MWIZA, post the August 12 general elections, what role should the young people play to ensure that they protect the civic space, which has equally been shrinking?
Well, you're very right when you say the civic space has been shrinking, especially for young people who, you know, hold leaders accountable. Accountability, a discussion that we've been having all along. There's always this notion that if you try and hold your leaders accountable, if you ask questions, then you are sponsored by the opposition, sponsored by, you know, some people somewhere.
Civil society.
Yes, exactly, which you know, is not the case, because every citizen should take interest in how their resources are being managed, in what laws and policies are being made that will affect them. So yeah, even though the civic space is shrinking, I feel like as young people we definitely still need to continue raising our voices, because that's where the power is. And I also feel like we need, I don't know, it could be far-fetched, but we need a whole overhaul of some sort of the system. Because, you know, apart from just with a lot of these things that are happening, it's because systems that are put in place are not respected. The rule of law is being used to favor, you know, particular individuals or particular groupings. And so things like justice are not being served, you know, fairly. You know, so I feel like we also need to reach a point where we respect our systems. You know, not just because you're aligned to a particular political party, then you can steal money from the people, and you know that you eventually, you know, you just find your way out. You know, so I feel like we also need to begin to respect systems that are put in place in our country, systems, and we also need to respect the rule of law.
Brian, your take on that?
Maybe you can just...
Yeah, I'm trying to find out what should be the role of young people post the August 12 general election in terms of protecting the civic space. We know that it has been shrinking at some point because of the shrinking civic space.
Yeah.
We saw people protesting in the bush because it cannot be done in the compound. Yeah,
and we also see media houses being shut down. It could be newspapers, it could be TV stations, it could be radio stations. That's also a sign that the civic space is shrinking. But you know, the solution is pretty much what MWIZA has stated, to say we have to continue holding leaders accountable. We also have to continue speaking out and using our voices You know, you can't, as long as I'm not behind bars, you haven't stopped me from speaking. I'll speak. If you arrest me or jail me, the next person, the MWIZA seated next to me, will also come up and speak out. If they arrest or jail MWIZA, another person will come up. That's what happens when everyone is speaking out. So eventually then everybody will just end up in the prisons, and there won't be space there, and that can't happen. So because that can't happen, we must all continue speaking out. It's really our role to ensure that we protect the civic space.
And also, just in addition to what Biflo has said, I feel like, because he talked about prison, so I thought about this. As young people, even as we, you know, address these issues, even as we hold our leaders accountable, it's not leeway for us to begin to insult, for us to begin to commit crimes in the name of we're holding our leaders accountable. Because accountability is not about individuals. It's not about me not liking President so-and-so or me not liking this particular minister. It's about me seeing how my resources are being managed. It's about me, you know, caring about policies that are being made that will affect me. So as young people, you know, because sometimes people will say all sorts of things and then, you know, in the name of accountability, and then, you know, they'll say, no, but, you know, I have the right to speak out. You know, while we have the right to express ourselves, we can also do so respectfully.
I do agree, actually. We must not be overzealous or emotional as we try to air our views as young people. You know, we need to be objective. We need to come from an informed point of view whenever we are speaking. You need to make sure that you are well researched, you know the details of what you are talking about, and let's not character assassinate. Let's not start looking at people's individual lives or private lives. Let's stick to the issues that affect you. If there is corruption, and you know that it's there, and it can be, your claims can be backed by evidence or information that is in the public domain, then speak out. If you know that there is an issue of a company that procured, you know, expired drugs, and it's in public domain, if you know there's the issue of 42 fire tenders or 48 houses, it's in public domain, it's in the news every day, everyone is talking about it, you can speak about it. But if you're going to just talk about anything in the name of freedom of expression, then the law might just visit you, unfortunately. So that's definitely a timely appeal to our fellow young people to say, even as we say, let's be brave enough to speak, we must speak from an informed point of view and also with objectivity.
Interesting. Our dear viewers, in case you're just joining us, you are watching the Ask Election TV series, an initiative brought to you by the Alliance for Community Action. And we are discussing the role of the youths in shaping Zambia's future after the elections. And my guests on the program are MWIZA ZULU as well as BWEMBYA. They are both human rights advocates as well as musicians. You can also participate later on the program by dialing the numbers. On MTN we are on 0968-675273, and on Airtel we are on 0973-167840. You will be able to be through to the station by dialing those numbers. Now, proceeding with our topic of discussion, as we talk about issues affecting young people. I understand during the campaign period especially, we see young people being used as tools for political violence. But how can young people post the election period come out strong and position themselves to be relevant in the country's development trajectory?
Well, I think it begins with the realization by the young people themselves that we are worth so much more than, you know, being cadres and throwing stones. Because young people have so much energy, young people have so much brains, young people have the capacity to change the world. And so once we realize that, you know, when you realize that you are such a powerful human being, you won't allow any other human being to send you and say, go and beat that one for a bottle of beer or, you know, for a 20 kwacha. So I feel like we definitely need to realize that as young people. And also we need to, you know, find our ways into these spaces. Like during this election season, a lot of young people are contesting, which is impressive. But we need even more young people, not just in, you know, because not all of us will be councillors and MPs. You know, we need more young people holding leaders accountable. We need more activists. You know, we need more young people in whatever space they are in to actually continue to hold their leaders accountable. And also, accountability, governance is not just an election issue. Like you said in your question, it's beyond elections. Because today we'll vote, there'll be a government in place, whatever they do will begin to affect us. So it's not just about, you know, elections, because young people become very active politically and get involved in these conversations, especially during the election period. And beyond the election, it's just like, okay, you know, this, that. And I kind of think the leaders have also taken advantage of that, because some leaders talk about elections from the time they're elected to the time the next election is happening. So I feel like we need to understand also that governance is beyond elections, and our role, everything that we are talking about, the holding leaders accountable, the actually taking time to read and understand our governance system, is not just about the election period, it's about every single day of our lives, because governance is every day.
Brian, how can youth ensure that the party that wins elections remains accountable to the electorate?
We go back to issues of accountability. It's about, you know, raising our voices and making sure that our voices are loudest, and you know, and the best time to actually start that accountability is now. You know, I think right now the mood in the country actually shows that young people are unhappy about a lot of things, and they are speaking out. They're even using platforms such as social media. So already that in itself, whoever forms government in 2021 already has an idea of the kind of mood that's there in the country in terms of how young people want to be governed. So it starts now, so that by the time the elections pass and these people begin to implement whatever manifesto and campaign promises they had you know, given us, they already know that we will be held accountable, because there's a generation of young people who will not tolerate people taking them for a ride. And so it's up to us as young people right now. This is the best time to position ourselves and speak out more and more, so that our leaders who are vying for all these political offices know that they will be held accountable. So in short, we are preparing our leaders and their minds to know that we are a generation that wants accountability and transparency.
I know in this year's elections, we have identified already that there are young people who are contesting the elections. And in the past, we have seen young people also failing to uphold their promises.
Right.
And how can we change that narrative, especially by ensuring that young people hold these leaders accountable, so that they uphold the reputation of young people? How can that be ensured?
You know, I want to stay positive that young people who, because there's a number of them who are standing, I hope those that are elected will actually, you know, fulfill their promises, because young people, especially during this period, there's been some kind of revolution by young people in the air. So, you know, the young people from this period are setting precedents for future generations. Because, you know, as we've said already, people will tell you politics, they are now this, that, this, that, this, that. So if young people today go into parliament, become councillors or elected in whatever positions they're elected in, and then, you know, they don't fulfill their promises, they just become, you know, like everyone else. And then in the future, when we say young people need to participate in politics, they'll say, but you know, we gave you the chance to participate, and look at what happened. So I feel like this is an appeal, especially to the young people that are going to be elected, that you are setting precedents for future generations of young people, not just yourselves. So it's very important, and whether you're a young person or not, you will be held accountable. Accountability is for everyone, women, men, young people. So we will definitely hold even our fellow young people accountable, but I would like to appeal for them to set a good precedence for future generations of young people.
Interesting. Now we have also seen that the rise in the use of internet, where internet has enabled communication via social media platforms, where people can exchange information, listen to news, and various promote themselves, do all sorts of activities via the internet. Now, how can, in your own point of view, I want to find out, Brian, how has the use of social media impacted the lives of young people?
In so many ways, actually, you know, there's the business aspect. We've seen young people coming up with different businesses that they're advertising. You see people going live on Facebook and saying, "Itananani, itananani, come and buy what I'm selling here." We see so many young people promoting their products and services on social media. That's one of the positive uses, and that's how social media has been used. That's in a positive way. Of course, we know that it's also been used to cyberbully people. It's also been used for different things. When it comes to politics and issues of, you know, governance and holding leaders accountable, social media again has been used. You have given an example of a time when young people could not be allowed to protest on the streets. There was police presence with very big weapons, sophisticated weapons all over, and young people took to the bush. But for the message that was in the bush to be heard, it took the use of social media. You know, social media was utilized, and a lot of people watched, in millions. People watched that protest and participated in it by way of commenting and, you know, showing solidarity virtually. So social media has really played a role in holding leaders accountable and making sure that the voices of young people are heard by our leaders. One very good example of something that came as a result of the Bush protest, and as well as a result of the use of the internet, was the famous Youth Empowerment Fund that we heard about. It came because young people used social media. Although some of our leaders were saying, don't use social media to talk to government, what do you know about governance, and all these things, but deep down they were listening to the message, and that's why they said, okay, they made a knee-jerk reaction and said, okay, let's just give them this youth empowerment. And they said, oh, we've heard your cries, we've heard what you're saying on social media. So here we are now starting to implement this particular thing. Whether it's just a pronouncement for political mileage, or whether it's really a meaningful empowerment, that's another topic for another day, which also can be another debate, because for some of us we believe that don't give me fish, teach me how to fish. Because, and if you're going to talk about empowerment, is it true that, you know, a lot of the young people have received this empowerment, or is it only for certain people maybe who support a particular political grouping? So, but that's an example of how government is able to even respond to some of the views of the young people which are expressed via social media.
Interesting. MWIZA, you have a thought on that?
I'm thinking, as Biflo is talking about empowerment, that, you know, I recently graduated, and like I said, I was studying politics and international relations. Mm-hmm. So my dissertation was actually on empowerment and how, you know, it impacts on the recipients and the lives of the recipients. And like has been claimed by many people, and I think research is there to prove it, that some of these pronouncements, some of these empowerment funds are just merely political tools. You know, you have to be aligned to a certain political party. I literally went to political party offices to see how these things happen, and you can see that a lot of these empowerment funds are merely just for political mileage. But like has been said, you know, so many youth empowerment, youth that, youth this. I remember one of our colleagues, his name is now, was counting the number of times that youth was said in the media by politicians after that protest, and that's a result of how much impact social media can make. We are now living in a digital age, you know, especially now also with the pandemic. Even a lot of the campaigns are happening online, you know, so we can definitely use social media wisely and technology wisely. You know, some of these platforms that because we can't meet in hundreds physically, you know, you make a Zoom conference, for example, that's technology, and you can, you know, interact with fellow young people, talk about leadership, accountability with fellow young people because of social media and technology. So I think we definitely do need to use it wisely. Some people have not used it wisely, you know, but obviously that has repercussions. And as young people, we need to avoid that. We need to realize that social media is a platform that can be used for positive change, and it already has. So we need to continue doing that. Yeah,
even in terms of comparing maybe the quality of the different, you know, political aspirants, the ones that want to aspire for political office, we can use social media to stalk them to start looking at what each one of them is saying, you know, I can see to say, okay, that particular political party leader has got a Facebook page. They're also using, you know, social media and the internet.
Even though they were telling young people
not to use it.
Yeah,
but they are using it. So we can, every morning you can even check what has this one posted, what has this one said, so that you compare. And as citizens, it's also an opportunity for us to know what the government is doing each and every day in line with the SDGs that we're talking about. We see every morning the president posts something, whether it's a prayer or whether it's something that he will be doing on that particular day, and it's our responsibility. It's upon us as young people and as citizens to say, let me check what the president is saying today so that I know how he is working and how he's serving me, or let me check how that opposition political party or party leader is, you know, starting his day and what things he has lined up, in order for me to know whether he deserves my vote or not.
Interesting. Now that I'll just try to get something out of you, you two, because we saw the protest, and the protest is the one that raised us in terms of talking about the issues to do with the youths. Now I want to find out, were you among the beneficiaries of the we saw people were prominent, but others ended up benefiting. Credit though, but were those immediate needs the music industry needs, or we needed to do something big that would benefit all the musicians in the country? Ladies first.
Well, for starters, no, I have not been a beneficiary to the Artist Empowerment Fund. And Biflo mentioned something about the government having some sort of knee-jerk reaction after that particular period, and I feel like that Artist Empowerment Fund was one of those things. Personally, I feel like it could have been better implemented. Yes, of course, it's great that, you know, there's people are being empowered, there's money being given, but I feel like there's a lot more preparation that needed to be done before, you know, even giving out that money. Today, I don't even know what's happening with, you know, projects and people that have received the Artist Empowerment Fund, you know, and again, that's an issue of accountability which we need to follow up. But yeah, so I feel like it could have been better done, and it was one of the reactions that just came, you know, just because also there was a misconception that, you know, because in the Bush protest there was, you know, Biflo, MWIZA, ZULU, Wezi, Michael Zulu, and they're like, it's the musicians that are making noise, and you know, so it's like, yes, we need to give the musicians money. So yeah, I feel like it could have been better done, and going forward I feel like they need to plan some of these things better.
Yeah, I am not a beneficiary of the Youth Empowerment Fund. First of all, when we started to speak out and when we decided to protest in the bush, you know, it's not because we wanted to be empowered ourselves. We were speaking on behalf of the majority youth of our country who might not have the kind of platform and influence that we have. They might not be the ones to be invited to Camnet to sit down and speak. So we hear, we live in the community and we hear what our people are saying. They also tell us, oh, mkatimbe ko mkanimbo, mkatimbe ko makatimbe ko vaso. Oh, you should speak for us the next time you're on Camnet TV. You should, you know. So that's what we were trying to do. We're just representing the people. But for others, obviously, they thought we want to serve ourselves, and that's why immediately after the Bush protest, there was a minister who actually went in a church and made an announcement to say this Youth Empowerment Fund is not for those activists who are protesting in the bush. So already they made it clear to say some of us cannot actually even apply for that empowerment fund. You know, then later on, I think after about a week, then we heard the Vice President saying even the ones that protested can also, you know, access the empowerment. But though we never got access to that empowerment fund, and it wasn't our primary goal. We just wanted to speak for many Zambians, but still we continue to speak, because even when the whole initiative came about, we kept hearing young people complaining to say, you guys, that thing that you advocated for, which we heard as a pronouncement, but where is it? We are not receiving it. We have even heard some of them that say they applied, but maybe they only saw certain people who they've seen at campaign rallies receiving those funds. So it's really a continuous debate that we can debate the whole night.
And I feel like just in addition, because like Brian said, the issues that were raised during that particular period and that are still being raised, some of them have not been addressed. You know, it's like, for example, you are in a relationship with someone and you say, I don't think we're communicating well. And then they give you money. Like, why are you giving me money? This is not the problem, you know? So I feel like sometimes our leaders just respond for the sake of responding, but you know, it shows a lack of genuineness when listening to our concerns, because then you say, yes, we've listened to you, here is money, but that means you were not listening, because that's not what we were saying. So I feel like even when leaders, you know, claim to respond to, you know, to listen to us, they should actually listen to us, because if you are not responding to our needs and the direction that you're heading is a totally different direction. I remember, I'm not sure if it was before or after, I think it was after the protest that they held this youth meeting by the Ministry of Youth. Yeah, after the protest, there was this youth meeting by the Ministry of Youth. And you look at the agenda, and it's basically just people making speeches and this and that. But that's not what we're asking for. We want to be heard. And then you see people saying, no, but you were invited and you didn't go. But that's not what we are asking for. You know, so I feel like even when responding, our leaders should actually listen to us and actually genuinely listen to our concerns.
Someone termed it as a bribe, to say this empowerment fund sounds like it's a bribe that is meant to, you know, shut the voices of those that speak out. Because a very good example is the reaction to the fact that because the majority of the people that protested in the bush looked like they were musicians, and then you decide to come up with an empowerment fund that only favors musicians, but there are many other sections of the youth population in the country. So that someone described it as a bribe to make musicians believe that, oh, we shouldn't speak out because we have been taken care of. So we shouldn't, you know, be opposed to anything that, you know, is being done by the regime.
Interesting. But how can we ensure that the internet, or rather social media, is not used to advance political violence, but for the development of young people?
You know, I'm always saying that what happens on social media is a reflection of what happens in society. And so even as we, you know, advocate for people to use social media wisely, it's the very same people that are in reality, you know, perpetuating this violence. So I feel like the shift in, you know, the cultures and behaviors is on and off social media. But the thing with social media is it's very personal. You know, so someone won't come and grab my phone and say, this is what you need to post. So it requires a lot of personal responsibility, you know, because especially for people with large followings, not just them, but especially for them, you know, things that you say are sometimes taken as the gospel truth by your followers. So if you're there, you know, preaching, insulting people, and preaching violence, rather, insulting people and things like that, you are creating that culture, you know, and not only for them, even people, you know, because people think that impact on social media is only by BFlow or MWIZA or WEZI or whoever else. But, you know, everything that you put out there, there's someone who's reading it. You know, there's someone who's seeing it. If it's a live video, there's someone who's watching it. And so we need to be very, very responsible in the way we actually handle social media and make sure that as we are preaching peace and trying to maintain peace in the real world, we also do the same in the virtual world.
Yeah. You have a say on that.
Yeah, well, we've got to be responsible in the way that we use social media, because in the things that we say, like she has said, MWIZA has said, to say, you know, people take what you say, especially if you are an influential person, as the gospel truth, and they will use that. I recently saw one you know, well-known politician posting about, you know, posting a threat against someone and saying, oh, that guy deserves to be beaten. And when he posted that, there were two groups of people that were commenting. Some people were saying, how can a leader be speaking like this? But then there's another group that is saying, you are right, our leader. We need to beat that chap up. We need to beat him up. And so, you know, you're creating a very dangerous environment using social media, using what you post or what you say on social media. Therefore, we continue talking about, you know, objectivity and the responsible use of social media. I keep saying young people need to be well informed and well researched so that whatever they are saying is backed by evidence and backed by information that is in the public domain.
Looking at the country's structure in terms of, we see that we are at provincial level, district, constituency, and we are at ward level, and as well as branch levels. Now, we see a lot of disengagement in terms of young people participating. Let's say, for instance, at ward level, we have what we call the ward development committees. Don't you think there should be a milestone towards ensuring that young people start getting actively involved in the country's governance system?
I think they definitely should, because, you know, I feel like the idea of decentralization is to make it easier for every person to have access to the governance system. You know, because today I may not have access to the president and state house, which is understandable, but I should be able to have access to my councillor, who maybe should be able to have access to my MP, and in that way our voices are heard. So yes, I feel like we definitely need to take advantage of these structures. Again, the problem is that everything is just so politicized. Like, it's all about...
But MPs are inaccessible. It's not easy to... maybe at council level.
You know, I had a personal experience with my area MP some years back, because I was with a group of young people and we had an agenda that we wanted to advance. And at the time he said, I don't have time for this. I'm too busy with ministerial duties. It's like, okay, but you know, you're still our MP, you know. So yeah, leaders need to be more accessible, and these structures definitely need to be used to help everyone have access to, you know, to the governance system. People in Kaputa won't be able to come to Lusaka to meet the president, for example, but you know, they should be able to, there are structures in their areas, in every area, that should allow ideally people to be able to participate in the governance system. So we definitely need to utilize those.
Before, we have what we call Constituency Development Fund, CDF. But we also talk about sustainable development goals. How can we ensure that people in their own constituencies advocate for policies or rather some sort of development that can enable them towards achieving the sustainable development goals? Because when we talk about health issues, education issues, they are accessed at a community level. So how can we ensure that we start influencing such funds to ensure that they help us achieve our development goals post the August 4th general elections?
Yeah, I think that the easiest way to put it for me is we need to stop being passive. A lot of you know, the Zambian citizenry is so passive that they believe that they don't have the right. They don't know that, I don't know, they know, but they don't enjoy that right. The right to hold a leader accountable, the right to make demands, you know, to go and demand and say, you promised this, but you're not doing it. Oh, there's a CDF fund here, but is it being administered and utilized the way it's supposed to? Because they just, a lot of people just believe to say, no, those are our leaders, and you know, we're in a society where someone who is in a leadership position or someone who's older than you, if you challenge them, then you're being disrespectful. So for cultural reasons, a lot of people become so passive, even with things that are enshrined in the Constitution, and you know that this is a right that you're supposed to enjoy. So we need to stop being passive and, you know, start ensuring that our leaders are using these funds for the intended purposes vis-a-vis the SDGs.
And just to add on, I feel like I'm going back to the issue of personalization of governance, because also apart from just young people thinking that, you know, governance is for the government, there's also this idea that, you know, this accountability and speaking out is left for activists or people who identify as activists. So, you know, they will see something wrong and they'll say, I can't say anything. Maybe Biflo will say something, or maybe MWIZA will say something. But at the end of the day, it's also your responsibility to speak out. Yes, some people may have a larger following. Yes, some people, you know, might have more influence, but at the end of the day, we all have the responsibility to hold our leaders accountable. And it's not just the responsibility of people who identify as activists.
before, don't you think we also need civic education to ensure that more Zambians are able to articulate issues or understand issues like you people do?
We really do. We really need a lot of civic education, not just from the formal education perspective, because some of us learned civics and then later on it was called civic education. Other people did social studies, and in all those studies you are learning about, you know, your rights in a democracy. It's a government for the people, by the people, and therefore those people need to hold each other accountable, you know. But there's a big group of people, the majority, that have not had the opportunity of having a certain level of education. And that civic education now needs to go to the community in an informal setting. And one of the ways of pushing civic education is by using art. You know, musicians can be conscious and sing about the different happenings in the country. That way you are enlightening people for them to know what's going on, and you're educating them. That's why we call it edutainment.
And you know, even with narrowing it down maybe to like the elections themselves, I feel like, I don't know if this is just me, but I feel like back in the day there was a lot more voter education by people like the Electoral Commission. ECZ went full on, you know, with teaching people how to vote, what to do, what not to do. And that there's been a reduction in that. And when you look at the turnout for the 2016 election, for example, it was 56%. You have, I don't know, 85,000 plus spoiled ballots. And that shows you that people may not necessarily fully understand this process. So I feel like we need to go back to the days when voter education, civic education was actually taken very seriously, because it might look like it's a simple issue. People just need to know that they need to stand up and go and put an X on a ballot paper. But it's not, you know, so I think we need to go back to the days, especially for the ECZ, where they were full on with voter education.
What Zambia are you projecting after the election? What would you term to be as an ideal Zambia?
If you ask me, to be very honest with you, there's a lot of uncertainty on my part. I'm not certain where our country is going, looking at the many happenings that are happening, that we keep seeing, even in terms of how leaders communicate with the electorate, how leaders communicate with each other, how they relate, how they just can't show you a certain level of responsibility. It's really worrying for me as a young person to say, what is the future of my country? So the future is uncertain as things stand.
I agree that the future is uncertain, but if you ask me for my ideal, you know, which may not be, you know, achieved soon, but you know, obviously I want to see a country where, first of all, the rule of law is respected. I want to see a country where people are allowed to express themselves and hold their leaders accountable. And even before people hold their leaders accountable, I want to see a Zambia where leaders are transparent, even before you have to hold them accountable. Leaders, you know what your leaders are doing, how they are spending your money. You know, I want to see a Zambia free from political violence. You know, I want to see, you know, a Zambia where, you know, children have access to proper education. You know, I want to see a Zambia where there's proper medicine that's not expired in hospitals. You know, so it's a lot that, you know, I'd want to see, but
I also want to see the appreciation of the kwacha.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah, so definitely there's a lot that would need to be done for us to achieve our ideal Zambia. But for now, we can only hope and pray that, you know, in the next, after the elections, we will see an improvement when it comes to, you know, good governance.
What is your word of advice to young people as they go to cast their vote on the 12th of August 2021?
Well, I would like to urge my fellow young people to vote wisely. I know it sounds cliche when someone says vote wisely, but I really mean it to say vote wisely. Analyze and vet the different political candidates that we have out there. See what they are offering, and then look at their track records as well. Look at how they have led in various capacities wherever they have worked, in order for you to make an informed decision and say, this is the candidate, or these are the candidates that I would like to vote for. So I will just repeat the cliche: vote wisely.
Yeah, and just in addition, I think young people must again realize that they are worth so much more than being used as tools of political violence, than being just, you know, cadres and things like that. So we need to, you know, use our youth wisely. Apart from just voting wisely, we need to realize that we have so much potential as young people. So let's stay away from political violence. Let's read up. Let's participate in progressive conversations about governance. And most importantly, let's go out and vote on 12th August.
Well, I would like to thank you for finding time to be part of the program.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Soko. We really appreciate, and thanks to all our viewers for having tuned in.
Thank you. Well, our dear viewers, we've come to the end of the program. Remember to catch another episode of the Ask Elections TV series, an initiative brought to you by the Alliance for Community Action. Next week, Friday, we've been discussing the role of the youths in shaping Zambia's future after the elections. We've discussed a number of issues pertaining to development, especially on the Sustainable Development Goals, which Zambia has affirmed to. There is life beyond elections. Your host, I've been Patrick Soko, and stay tuned to Kami TV as we come with another episode of The Verdict.